It was supposed to be a simple search, a missing family, a remote location, a few unanswered questions. But what investigators would find deep in the wilderness of Oklahoma would turn this case into one of the most disturbing disappearances in modern American history. The pickup truck was discovered on a narrow dirt road, surrounded by thick forest in every direction. No houses, no businesses, no cell signal, just silence. The vehicle was unlocked. The windows were intact. There were no signs of damage, no crash, no skid marks, no indication of panic. Inside the truck were personal belongings, wallets, identification, a GPS device, and a cell phone. Everything a family would normally take with them left behind. But the Jamison family was nowhere to be found. As investigators searched the vehicle, something even more unsettling emerged. The family dog was still inside, alive, weak, hungry, but alive. Days had passed since anyone had seen the Jamisons, yet the dog had somehow survived alone in the vehicle. That detail alone sent a chill through everyone at the scene. Who leaves their dog behind in the middle of the wilderness? Search teams were deployed immediately. Helicopters scanned the dense forest from above. Volunteers spread out on foot, combing through miles of rugged terrain. Nothing. No footprints leading away. No blood, no torn clothing, no trail to follow. It was as if the Jamison family had simply vanished into the trees. But the more investigators studied the scene, the more unsettling questions emerged. Why drive so deep into an isolated area without telling anyone? Why leave behind essential items? Why abandon a vehicle that was still operable? This wasn't a crime scene in the traditional sense. It was a mystery frozen in time. And as authorities began looking into the family's lives, they realized something troubling. The disappearance didn't start in the forest. It started weeks earlier, with strange behavior, with disturbing videos, with writings that suggested fear, paranoia, and something deeply wrong. The abandoned truck wasn't the beginning of the story. It was the warning. Before the wilderness swallowed them, the Jamison family lived an ordinary life on the surface. Bobby Jamison worked hard. Sherilyn was deeply protective of her family. They were raising their daughter and trying to build something stable. But beneath that surface, something was shifting. Friends and relatives later described a growing sense of isolation. The Jamisons had begun pulling away from people they once trusted. Conversations became tense. Interactions felt guarded. And then there was the fear. The family reportedly believed they were being watched, that someone was following them, that danger was close, though no one else could see it. This fear didn't come and go. It lingered. Bobby and Sherilyn spoke openly about threats, about people who wanted to harm them, about needing to protect themselves at all costs. To outsiders, it sounded irrational. To the Jamisons, it felt real. In the weeks leading up to their disappearance, their behavior changed dramatically. They packed their belongings. They withdrew large amounts of cash. They talked about leaving, about starting over somewhere remote. But they never explained why. Even more unsettling were the moments caught on video. A recording surfaced showing the Jamison family sitting in their living room, silent, motionless, not speaking, not interacting. For long stretches, they simply stared ahead. No smiles, no conversation, no comfort. The footage disturbed everyone who saw it. It didn't look like a family preparing for a new beginning. It looked like a family bracing for something. As investigators studied these details, a troubling picture began to form. The Jamisons weren't running toward opportunity. They were running from fear, and whatever they believed was chasing them, followed them into the wilderness. Among all the evidence connected to the Jamison family, one piece stands apart: a video. At first glance, it appears ordinary, just a family sitting together in their living room. But the longer you watch it, the more uncomfortable it becomes. The Jamisons sit on the floor. Bobby, Sherilyn, their daughter. They don't speak. They don't interact. Minutes pass. No laughter. No conversation. No reassurance. They simply stare. The camera keeps rolling as silence fills the room. No one checks the lens. No one acknowledges it. Their expressions remain blank, almost distant. For investigators, this video raised immediate concern. Families don't behave like this naturally. Not in moments of planning. Not in moments of comfort. Not even in moments of stress. Something was wrong. Experts who reviewed the footage struggled to explain it. Some suggested extreme emotional distress. Others pointed to paranoia or fear. But no single explanation fully accounted for what viewers were seeing, because this wasn't panic. It was resignation. The kind of stillness that comes after someone believes escape is no longer possible. What makes the video even more disturbing is its timing. It was recorded shortly before the Jamison family disappeared. This wasn't a reflection captured after tragedy. It was a warning captured before it. Investigators began asking hard questions. Why record this moment? Who was the video meant for? Was it evidence or a message? And then there was the atmosphere. The room felt heavy, oppressive, as if something unseen was present. The silence felt intentional, not accidental. Some viewers reported feeling uneasy within seconds of watching it. Others said they couldn't finish the clip at all because it didn't feel like observation. It felt like intrusion. As investigators paired the video with the family's behavior, withdrawals, isolation, fear, the conclusion became unavoidable. The Jamisons were not preparing for a fresh start. They were bracing for something they believed was inevitable. And whatever that fear was, it didn't stay behind when they left home. In the days before the Jamison family disappeared, their behavior became impossible to ignore. Friends noticed it first. Phone calls grew shorter. Conversations felt strained. The Jamisons spoke carefully, as if choosing their words mattered more than usual. They trusted fewer people. They shared less information. They seemed guarded. Then came the withdrawals. Large amounts of cash were taken out of their accounts. Not for a vacation. Not for a purchase anyone could explain. It was the kind of move people make when they don't plan on coming back soon. But the most alarming detail was where they were headed. The Jamisons weren't driving toward a city. They weren't going somewhere familiar. They were heading deep into the wilderness of Oklahoma, an area known for its isolation. No nearby towns. No cell service. No easy way out. Why choose a place like that? Investigators would later learn the family had been looking for remote land, somewhere they believed they could start over or hide. The Jamisons believed they were in danger, that someone was after them, that their lives were at risk. To them, the wilderness wasn't a threat. It was protection, but fear clouds judgment. And whatever the Jamisons believed they were escaping may have followed them. Their final movements showed intention. This wasn't a random drive. They knew where they were going. They brought supplies. They brought their dog. What they didn't bring were survival essentials. No tents, no proper gear, no plan for staying overnight. That contradiction troubled investigators. Why prepare to disappear, but not prepare to survive? As the family's last known steps came into focus, one truth became unavoidable. The Jamisons weren't just running towards something new. They were running away from something they believed was already too close. And the wilderness became the final place they were ever seen. As investigators searched for answers, they discovered something deeply troubling: writings, diary entries left behind by Sherilyn Jamison. At first, the pages seemed disorganized, rambling, difficult to follow. But as authorities read deeper, a pattern emerged: fear, not vague anxiety, but a sustained, overwhelming belief that danger was closing in. Sherilyn wrote about being watched, about people who wanted to harm her family, about needing to protect her child at all costs. The entries didn't describe a single incident. They described a state of mind, a constant feeling that something terrible was coming. She wrote about trust being broken, about enemies hiding in plain sight, about threats that never fully took shape, but never went away either. To investigators, the diary was alarming, not because it described a crime, but because it described a family living in survival mode. Cheryl Lynn believed the world outside their home was hostile, that people around them couldn't be trusted, that isolation was the only answer, and isolation is dangerous. The more investigators read, the clearer it became that the Jamisons were not planning a normal move. They were preparing for something they believed was unavoidable. Some entries hinted at religious fear. Others suggested paranoia. All of them pointed to escalating distress. But here's what made the diary truly unsettling. There was no moment of clarity, no turning point, no plan written down, no goodbye. Just fear, uninterrupted and unresolved. Investigators debated what the writings meant. Were they evidence of mental illness? Were they signs of extreme stress? Or were they warnings about a threat no one else ever recognized? No answer felt complete. Because despite the fear described on those pages, the Jamison family still drove into the wilderness. They still believed isolation was the solution. And whatever they were afraid of, it didn't stop them from disappearing. Once the Jamison family was officially reported missing, the search began immediately, and it was massive. Local authorities were joined by state agencies. Helicopters swept over the dense Oklahoma wilderness. Search teams moved on foot through rough terrain, thick brush, and steep hills. Dogs were brought in. ATVs covered miles of dirt roads. Volunteers combed areas no one had walked through in years. The wilderness fought back. The terrain was unforgiving. Visibility was limited. Trails vanished without warning. Dense forest swallowed sound and evidence. Days passed, then weeks. Search teams returned again and again to the area where the truck was found. They followed ravines. They searched near water sources. They expanded the radius outward, hoping to find something, anything. They found nothing. No footprints leading away from the truck. No clothing. No signs of a campsite. No evidence of an accident. It was as if the family had simply dissolved into the landscape. Investigators struggled to explain how 3 people could vanish so completely in an area that had been searched repeatedly. The dog's survival raised even more questions. If the family had wandered off on foot, why leave the animal behind? If something had happened suddenly, where were the signs? If foul play was involved, how was there no trace? Every possibility led to a dead end. As time went on, the search slowed. Resources were pulled. Leads dried up. The wilderness kept its silence. And with each passing day, the chances of finding the Jamison family alive grew smaller. But the most unsettling realization came later. Despite all the searching, the family had never been far from where the truck was found, which meant something had stopped them. Something final. With no bodies, no witnesses, and no physical evidence, investigators were left with only theories. And none of them fully explained what happened to the Jamison family. The first theory was simple. The family became lost. They wandered into the wilderness and succumbed to the elements. But this explanation fell apart quickly. Experienced search teams had combed the area repeatedly. If the Jamisons had walked away from the truck, something should have been found. Footprints, clothing, signs of a struggle to survive. There were none. Another theory suggested foul play, that someone followed the Jamisons into the wilderness, that an encounter turned violent, that the evidence was deliberately concealed. But again, there was a problem. There were no signs of a confrontation, no disturbed ground, no blood, no witnesses. Nothing to suggest another person had been there. Then came the theory that unsettled people the most, that fear, not violence, led to their disappearance, that the Jamisons' paranoia escalated into a fatal decision, that they abandoned their vehicle intentionally, that they believed isolation was safety. But even this explanation left unanswered questions. Why bring a dog and then leave it behind? Why take cash but leave essential supplies? Why go so deep into the wilderness without a clear plan? Every theory explained part of the story. None explain all of it. And that's what divided investigators. Some believed the family was fleeing an imagined threat. Others believed the threat was real. Still others believed something happened in the wilderness that was never documented. The evidence refused to settle into a single narrative. And as time passed, the case drifted further into uncertainty. The Jamison family had vanished, but the truth behind their disappearance remained just out of reach. After the searches ended, the Jamison family case slipped into silence. Months passed, then years. No new leads surfaced. No sightings were confirmed. The wilderness returned to what it had always been: quiet, untouched, indifferent. For investigators, the case became inactive. For the family and those who followed the story, the questions never stopped. How could 3 people disappear so completely? How could an entire family leave behind everything and leave no trace? The abandoned truck remained the final physical connection to the Jamisons. Their belongings stayed frozen in time, preserved as evidence of a moment that never moved forward. Then, nearly 4 years later, something changed. In a remote area, not far from where the truck had been discovered, a group of hunters stumbled upon something no one expected to find: human remains. The discovery was accidental. There were no markers, no obvious signs from a distance. Just bones scattered across the forest floor, partially hidden by leaves and time. Authorities were called immediately. As investigators carefully examined the site, the reality became devastating. The remains belonged to the Jamison family, the parents and their daughter. The news sent shockwaves through everyone who had followed the case. After years of nothing, the family had been there all along, not far from where the search had begun. What made the discovery even more heartbreaking was the condition of the site. There were no signs of violence, no clear cause of death, no definitive answers. Time and nature had erased what the wilderness had kept hidden. The Jamison family had not vanished without a trace. They had been lost, silently waiting to be found. The discovery of the Jamison family's remains was supposed to bring closure. Instead, it raised even more questions. Investigators carefully examined the site. The bones had been exposed to the elements for years. Weather, animals, and time had erased critical evidence. There was no clear cause of death, no indication of violence, no confirmation of an accident, no definitive explanation. The wilderness had taken its toll, not just on the bodies, but on the truth itself. One detail troubled investigators deeply. The remains were found relatively close to where the truck had been abandoned, close enough that they should have been discovered during the original searches. So how were they missed? Some suggested visibility issues, dense foliage, changing terrain, limited technology at the time. Others believed something else entirely. That the family may not have been there during the first searches, that they arrived later or were moved, but there was no proof. The diary entries were revisited, the video was watched again, the timeline was reconstructed over and over. Nothing lined up perfectly. Mental health experts weighed in. Some suggested paranoia may have driven the family deeper into isolation. Others warned against oversimplifying the case. Because fear alone doesn't explain everything. Why bring cash but leave survival gear? Why abandon a vehicle that still worked? Why leave a dog behind? Each answer created another contradiction. And slowly, the realization set in. Some mysteries don't resolve cleanly. Some stories end without certainty. The Jamison family's disappearance was no longer just about what happened. It was about what could never be known. The Jamison family's story doesn't end with answers. It ends with silence. 3 people entered the wilderness seeking safety or escape and never returned the same way. What they feared most may have followed them, or it may have lived entirely within their minds. We may never know. What we do know is this: fear can isolate. Isolation can distort reality. And the wilderness does not forgive hesitation or uncertainty. The Jamison family left behind more than an abandoned truck and unanswered questions. They left a warning about how quickly fear can consume a life and how easily the truth can disappear when no one is watching. Their story continues to haunt people not because it is violent, but because it is human. A family trying to protect itself. A decision that couldn't be undone. A mystery that nature quietly erased. Cases like this remind us that not every tragedy announces itself loudly. Some unfold slowly in silence until there is no way back. And perhaps that is what makes the Jamison family's disappearance so unsettling. Not what happened, but how easily it could happen again. If you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered and examined, take a moment to like this video. It helps more people discover these untold stories. And if you want more carefully researched, documentary-style true crime content, subscribe to the channel, because some mysteries fade, but others refuse to be forgotten.